What's going on, Summoners? My name is Nathan Ng and I'll be your host for this video. I'm really excited to let you guys know that Riot has let us know their plans for the next patch, so in this video we'll give you a preview of the changes that are going to be released in patch 11.4. There's always potential for changes on this list, so take note of that. Before we start though, hit that sub button. I really love talking to you guys about hitting that button because it means so much, as we'll be able to provide you guys with even more videos. To start things off, let's talk about the upcoming system nerfs. The biggest one that a lot of you guys probably already know about is what's happening to the jungle. For those of you who don't know about it, you have even more reason to subscribe. Just playing around, you can even check out our YouTube channel if you missed it because we've covered some expected changes recently. Overall though, we expect the amount of gold and XP that you get from the jungle clears to go down a decent amount. Now for something that we didn't know about yet but probably should have seen coming, Moonstone Renewer is getting a nerf. The Moonstaff meta has been very dominant, and we saw Staff of Flowing Water get nerfed this patch to address it. That's half of the issue out of the way, and the next patch you'll be seeing Moonstone receiving a nerf as well. While it's not for certain, I would personally expect to see the stat nerfs to the items. Staff of Flowing Water provides excessive amounts of ability power, and we might see a similar nerf for Moonstone Renewer. Or maybe the bonus health will go down as well, because this might leave the champions a little bit more fragile. If you're a utility-based champion, such as an enchanter, you're supposed to be rewarded for positioning safely anyway. So while it would hurt anyone who builds it, it shouldn't hurt its intended users as much. Speaking of which, here's our question of the day. What item do you still think needs a nerf? I think Turbo Chem Tank after its buff is actually a little bit too strong right now. A small nerf to either the bonus movement speed or the active's cooldown are something I'd like to see. Let me know your answers in the comments down below, and let's go ahead and move on to the item buffs. The following items are expected to receive buffs, and they are Everfrost, Cosmic Drive, Ginsu's Rageblade, Chemtech Chainsword, Mortal Reminder, and Morellonomicon. Out of all of these buffs, the one that surprises me the most is Everfrost. While it's not a popular purchase, I know the champions who do use it are seeing a lot of success with it. If it does get buffed, I would also hope to see some compensation nerfs so that the item doesn't become that much stronger. Ginsu's Rageblade is another item that simply feels very niche. With some buffs, I'm sure that more players are happily going to incorporate it into their builds. I'd expect to see some stat buffs for this item. While its passive is definitely powerful, you're purchasing 40% attack speed and 20% crit strike for 2,800 gold. Now, I know there's a lot of gold value placed on the passive, the damage conversion it provides, and the scaling as you build more crit chance, but what I'm trying to say is that for champions who don't rely on Ginsu's as a core part of their build, it definitely feels underwhelming, which, honestly, I think is fine. Not every champion needs to be able to use Ginsu's, but my guess is that Riot wants to make it so that it's not only champions that need it that build it. They want some champions who can build it to do so more often, and I'd like some base stat buffs that could be in the works. Maybe like with Infinity Edge, they might make it so that you can get more out of the item without needing to build so many other items beforehand. Ginsu's can prove to be rather cost inefficient when built first or second, so you could possibly be addressed next patch. The upcoming buffs that surprised me the least are the ones that apply grievous wounds. Chemtech Chainsword, Mortal Reminder, and Morellonomicon aren't weak by any means, but from my personal experience, I don't ever have a reason to build them. I'm absolutely content just chilling with my Executioner's Calling or my Oblivion Orb. While the effect these items provide are weaker, I invest so much gold that I could probably spend on another, more important items for my champion. I think buffing these completed items is a good move, because it means that when you really need that healing reduction, there's some incentive to actually itemize for it, rather than just cheap out and cut corners. With that covered, what's next on the list is champion nerfs. I know a lot of you guys are excited about these, and, well, especially when you're going to hear what champions are getting nerfed. First are Samira and Kai'Sa. While Samira can be pretty hit or miss, it's undeniable that she's really troublesome to play against. She is so privileged, I cannot find a better word to describe it. I mean, Riot essentially designed a character from a completely different game genre and threw her into a MOBA. Not only does she have insane DPS, she can destroy projectiles, has a dash that resets off takedown, and can follow up on crowd control to knock up enemies, and most importantly, the best taunt in the game, as she can crush an enemy's ego altogether. Now that's a lot of damage. Speaking of which, there have already been some nerfs placed on her in the PvE, so we could go ahead and have at least a little bit of a general idea of what direction that Riot wants to push her in. It looks like they'll be hitting her damage, the duration of her W, her dash, and her ultimate's cooldown. So yeah, a little bit of everything. Aside from the damage nerfs, Riot is trying to take away some excess utility that Samira has. Lowering the duration of her W might make the timing more strict, and her dash might take some hits with its range reduction and ability to cast on allies removed. Before we move forward, I want to quickly let you guys know that we're running a promotion on our website, ProGuides.com. Until the 20th, you can receive 15% off a ProGuide subscription by using the code PG15. Now, let's go ahead and hop right back into the video. Kai'Sa has been a top tier pick for several patches now. As a most picked marksman with an impressive win rate and ban rate to back it all up, it's no surprise that she's getting nerfed next cycle. I would probably personally expect her to get her damage lowered next patch. What makes Kai'Sa unique is how safe and mobile she is during the middle of fights. Rather than taking away from what makes her special, it would make sense to hit something very generic so that players pick her with the intent of utilizing her talents rather than defaulting to her because she's good at everything. Another nerf we got coming our way is to Skarner. When Turbo Chem Tank got buffed, Skarner popped off. He's been an absolute monster on Summoner's Rift, albeit a one that we don't see very often. In this case, Riot is going to adjust him in spite of his low play rate because it's easy to tell that he's strong. He received a ton of extra power due to an indirect buff, and cutting down on this only seems quite fair. The nerf I'd expect to see to this is his ultimate's cooldown. Sure, he can be pretty difficult to fight when he's near a spire, but I think he's rather manageable without one. Conditional strength makes it very clear when you should or shouldn't fight an enemy, but it's obvious that Skarner's ultimate is his strongest tool. If you don't have both Skarner's ultimate and Turbo Chem Tank available at the same time, his contribution to a fight diminishes severely. Keeping his windows of power strong is ideal, but making them less frequent should allow players to continue having high impact in games, while leaving Skarner a little bit less oppressive to play against than before. I mean, what is he gonna do anyway? Use Turbo Chem Tank to follow me on Instagram, Twitch, and TikTok at Nathan_ing. A little shameless self-plug there. And if you don't, that's okay, but it will sting a little bit more than these nerfs to Skarner, ironically. Renekton is also up for nerfs as he's a little bit too safe and reliable right now. It's always convenient and nice to have a reliable blind pick, but when it's too convenient, that in itself can be a little bit OP. I'm surprised though, because I feel like there are better blind picks like Gnar and Aatrox. But who knows, maybe Riot just doesn't like Crocs. I can understand why. What most high elo players can agree on is that Camille, however, has needed nerfs for such a long time. We've consistently placed her in the OP tier in our high elo tier list. For most players, she's sort of strong, but high elo players have been picking, banning, and heavily prioritizing her for several months now. The vast amount of versatility that she has makes her so good. She's got damage, mobility, crowd control, and is pretty durable. Like Renekton, she's a pretty safe and solid blind pick, but in her case, the nerf just feels a lot more justified. For her, I'd probably expect a nerf to her passive, as this plays a major role in what makes her strong early on. You can try avoiding her when she has it, but Camille can do the opposite and avoid fighting you when it's down. A slightly longer cooldown can make her a riskier pick. But of course, a simpler approach could just be nerfing her ability damage or base stats. Finally, let's get some good news in. We have some champion buffs. First up is to Caitlyn. Okay, I don't know if this is necessarily good news. I don't really like it when Caitlyn is in the meta, but you know, I mean, it's just not fun. Thank goodness though, because Riot has been taking it very slowly when trying to buff her. Historically, base stat buffs have proven to be far too much. So this time around, I'd expect a different approach. She might receive some buffs to her abilities instead. For example, a buff to her E or W could do the trick as these abilities aren't frequently used. If you could find a way to reward Caitlyn players for taking more risks, it would make a lot more sense to me. So I'd like to see a big buff to her E damage. Another marksman receiving a buff is Varus. He's also still underperforming heavily, and honestly, a buff in any form would be appreciated. Hopefully the buff to Ginsus is also going to help address this, depending on how much he gets. Things could completely turn around for him. Jinx received a lot of changes for patch 11.3, but overall, her win rate has stayed around the same. Unfortunately, the changes should have made her a stronger pick in high elo, but they haven't really done this, and it might be because Riot took too many precautions, making sure she wouldn't end up OP. I think that it's likely that she'll get back the base HP that she lost recently. Fiora is up for some buffs. The top lane meta has developed to favor a ton of champions who can outright beat Fiora in fights because they have stronger early games. Managing to survive, farm, and scale up should be rewarding for Fiora players, but it's not enough as the other top laners scale just as well. I'd expect to see some buffs to her abilities at later levels to reward players more heavily for just either outplaying their opponents and pulling ahead, or holding on and finishing items. Tryndamere also needs some buffs. While he can make use of the marksman mythic item like Gale Force, he's not doing exceptionally well. Crit items feel tailored heavily towards marksmen, and while Yone and Yasuo are currently thriving, Tryndamere is falling behind as one of League's few melee carries. Soraka is also set to receive buffs. I'd expect to see more healing. This is because the Moonstone Renewer is receiving a nerf, and Soraka is definitely underperforming in spite of how powerful the Moonstaff combo is. Braum is a unique warden, and he's gonna receive some buffs as well. Any melee support at the moment can do a decent job of protecting their allies. Locket of the Iron Solari is a great go-to mythic item, and combined with some crowd control, it's not too challenging to keep teammates safe. That's Braum's main job, however, I think that he could still use some buffs to make him even tankier. Veigar has not been doing so hot recently. With how fast games move, he doesn't have much time to reach his late game fantasy. Since the game duration is so short, I think giving him some more base damage on his spells shouldn't hurt too much. He alone can't really stall games that long, and with his recent 47% win rate and high elo, it's clear that players should be happy taking any buff that he receives at this point. I'm a little bit biased about this next one, but I'm really excited for Talon receiving a buff. I know he's not fun to play against, but he's extremely fun to play as. A lot of pro players have actually been avoiding him and instead opting out to pick any other AD assassins like Zed and his plays. To help him compete, he's set to receive some buffs, but it's hard to say where. I'd guess that he'd probably receive more damage on either his ultimate or passive. Players have to commit more heavily to utilize Talon's passive, and his ultimate having a longer cooldown on his other abilities means that buffing him will make his windows of power much more apparent. With everything that's going on in the jungle, it's finally time that Lee Sin got buffed. While he's had his moments, right now is not one of them. We have some incredible picks including the newest release Viego, and a buff to Lee Sin definitely wouldn't hurt. Amumu is another jungler who needs some love. Quite literally, man, that guy's sad all the time. Like, probably most of us on Valentine's Day. Yep, I'm calling you guys out, but you know, we could probably just play League of Legends or something. He received nerfs after nerfs when it turned out the new items were too powerful on him. I think that Riot went a little bit overboard on these nerfs, and we might see the nerf to his E as well as his mana growth reverted. That'll conclude our patch preview for 11.4. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to check out the description in the link if you're interested in joining our Discord. We have a great community where you can just make friends or just find out about things like giveaways or events that we host. Regardless, I'll see you all again very soon. Until next time, as always, my name's Nathan Ing. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.